You worship virtue and call it strength, yet power is the only language respected. Your morality isn't noble, it's camouflage for weakness predators exploit. You were taught that virtue builds authority. Work hard, be honest, stay loyal, tell the truth even when it hurts you, be fair, be patient, be kind, and eventually you'll be respected. That was the bargain. But authority does not operate on morality. It operates on leverage. From childhood, you were conditioned to confuse approval with power. Teachers rewarded compliance, parents praised obedience, institutions promoted predictability. You learned that being good meant being safe, and being safe meant being accepted. Acceptance felt like strength. It wasn't. Authority is not granted to the most virtuous man in the room. It is granted, or more accurately, conceded, to the man who can influence outcomes, the man who can impose cost, the man who cannot be easily replaced. Virtue without leverage is decoration. Look carefully at your life. When you were agreeable, accommodating, and fair, were you feared? Were you consulted before decisions were made? Were boundaries respected without explanation? Or were you appreciated, liked, used, relied upon, overextended? You were trained to be dependable, not dominant, and dependency is not authority. Authority is a perception of controlled threat. It is the silent understanding that crossing you carries consequence, not chaos, not emotional outbursts, controlled consequence. Virtue signals predictability. Predictability signals safety. Safety signals low threat. Low threat invites pressure. This is the chain you were never shown. You believe your integrity earns respect. In reality, integrity without power simply reassures others that you won't retaliate unfairly. It makes you easier to calculate, easier to test, easier to push. The good man announces his standards loudly. The powerful man enforces them quietly. That difference changes everything. Society teaches moral superiority because morally superior men are easier to govern. They hesitate, they self-correct, they apologize, they over-explain. They fear being perceived as unjust. And fear of perception is the beginning of subordination. Real authority does not need moral applause. It does not need consensus. It does not need validation from the crowd. It needs one thing, the ability to alter outcomes. When you walk into a room, people unconsciously assess two variables. Can he affect me? Will he? Moral signaling answers the second question, and usually in a comforting way. Power answers both. You were trained to believe that fairness creates loyalty. It doesn't. Power creates loyalty. Fairness stabilizes it. Reverse the order, and you become a servant to your own ideals. There is a reason organizations promote values publicly while negotiating ruthlessly in private. There is a reason leaders speak of ethics while calculating advantage behind closed doors. Virtue is a narrative. Power is a mechanism. You built your identity around narrative, and you wonder why outcomes feel out of your control. This chapter is not an attack on morality itself. It is an attack on your dependence on it as a primary strategy. Morality without strength is a plea. Strength without morality is chaos, but strength precedes morality in every hierarchy that has ever functioned. You were never told that sequence. You were told to be good first, powerful later. Later rarely comes. Authority is not the reward for virtue. It is the platform from which virtue can be safely expressed. Without that platform, your principles are negotiable by others. You believe your goodness makes you higher. In reality, it often makes you available. And availability is not authority. It is access. The lie you were trained to believe is simple, that being morally correct guarantees influence. It doesn't. Influence belongs to those who can withhold, apply pressure, and remain unmoved when tested. You were trained to move first, to soften, to reassure, to compromise early. That is not moral superiority. That is strategic disadvantage. Until you understand this lens shift, until you see virtue as secondary to leverage, you'll keep mistaking approval for authority. And approval is the currency of the manageable. Authority is the currency of the sovereign. The difference begins with recognizing the lie. Human beings do not consciously follow power. They react to it. Long before words are processed, the nervous system is scanning for dominance cues, posture, tone, pace, eye movement, emotional stability. These signals are older than language, older than morality. They belong to survival. When two men interact, there is an invisible negotiation happening beneath the surface. Who bends? Who holds frame? Who can impose cost? Moral signaling does not answer those questions. Power does. You believe people respect your ethics. What they actually assess is your capacity. Capacity to withdraw attention, capacity to replace them, capacity to escalate, capacity to remain unaffected. Virtue communicates intention. Power communicates capability. Capability determines hierarchy. This is the mechanism you were never shown. When you over-explain your decisions, you signal uncertainty. When you rush to prove your fairness, you signal fear of judgment. When you apologize too quickly, you signal submission to external evaluation. You call this humility. The nervous system reads it as concession. The powerful man does not need to convince you he is fair. He decides, he moves, he absorbs resistance without flinching. His restraint is chosen, not forced. That distinction shifts perception immediately. Consider how groups operate. In any room, the individual who speaks least but is listened to most holds silent authority. He does not chase agreement. He does not perform morality to secure approval. He allows silence to work for him. Silence under pressure is dominance. Moral signaling under pressure is anxiety management. You were trained to manage perception. The powerful learn to manage consequences. When conflict arises, the virtuous man seeks resolution quickly. He wants harmony restored. The powerful man assesses leverage first. Who needs what? Who risks more? Who can walk away? Walking away powerfully is a weapon. Needing resolution is dependency. This is not cruelty, it is structure. Hierarchy stabilizes groups, and hierarchy forms around perceived strength, not ethical consistency. The most good individual in a group is often emotionally relied upon, but strategically sidelined. He becomes the counselor, the mediator, the emotional laborer, not the authority. Authority belongs to the one who can tolerate tension without collapsing into explanation. Your nervous system betrays you when you crave to be seen as fair, because fairness becomes a performance, and performance invites evaluation. Evaluation places you beneath the evaluator. The powerful invert this dynamic. They evaluate others. They do not beg to be evaluated positively. Watch how people adjust around perceived dominance. Tone softens, jokes become cautious, boundaries are respected instinctively, no speech of values is required. This is subconscious calculation at work. Humans evolved in environments where misjudging strength had fatal consequences. That wiring remains, even in offices, even in relationships, even in friendships. When you rely on virtue to command respect, you're appealing to moral reasoning. But respect is rarely moral. It is strategic. It is an unconscious decision. This person is not safe to test, not because he is volatile, not because he is cruel, but because he is composed, decisive, and capable of withdrawal without apology. Moral signaling exposes your need to be seen correctly, and need is leverage, just not yours. The more you signal goodness, the more others sense your reluctance to disrupt harmony. That reluctance becomes predictable,
and predictability reduces perceived threat. Reduced threat lowers your rank. You may still be admired. You will not be deferred to. Power is not loud aggression. It is emotional impermeability. It is slow speech. It is controlled reaction. It is the absence of visible need. The sovereign man does not advertise his virtue. He selects when to apply it. He does not debate his boundaries. He enforces them. That enforcement can be as simple as withdrawal. No argument, no lecture, no explanation. Just consequence. The psychology is brutal and simple. People respect what can affect them. They test what cannot. Your morality does not affect them unless it is backed by cost. Without cost, it is commentary. With cost, it becomes law.
There are 3 versions of you. 1 was trained. 1 adapts. 1 rules. The virtuous man is the first. He believes character alone will elevate him. He invests in being reliable, principled, fair. He avoids conflict unless morally justified. He wants to be respected for his integrity. But integrity, in his case, is a currency he keeps handing out for free. He explains himself often. He clarifies intentions. He seeks to be understood. He corrects misunderstandings quickly because being seen incorrectly disturbs him. His weakness is not morality. It is attachment to perception. He wants to be known as good, and that desire places his identity in other people's hands. The powerful man is different. He understands leverage. He understands perception. He understands that authority is built through controlled unpredictability and visible consequence. He does not rush to clarify. He allows tension to linger. He negotiates from position, not emotion. If boundaries are crossed, he responds, not dramatically, but decisively. He does not need to appear good. He needs to remain effective. People adjust around him because they sense consequence. He is not cruel. He is not chaotic. He is simply immovable when required. But the powerful man still plays the game. He still operates within systems of influence. He still calculates status. He still cares about outcomes in relational hierarchies. He has learned dominance. He has not yet transcended it. Then there is the sovereign man. He is rare. He does not organize his identity around virtue or dominance. He organizes it around self-command. He can appear virtuous without being attached to it. He can exercise power without being intoxicated by it. His defining trait is detachment. Approval does not inflate him. Disapproval does not destabilize him. He does not overcorrect to protect reputation. He does not escalate to protect ego. He protects position. The virtuous man fears being perceived as unjust. The powerful man fears losing advantage. The sovereign man fears losing control of himself. That is the highest hierarchy. When insulted, the virtuous man explains. When challenged, the powerful man counters. When tested, the sovereign man evaluates whether engagement is even necessary. Often it isn't. Silence becomes selection. Selection becomes authority. The virtuous man negotiates for peace. The powerful man negotiates for leverage. The sovereign man only negotiates when it serves his long-term structure. This is not about cruelty. It is about architecture. The virtuous man builds bridges everywhere. The powerful man builds fortresses. The sovereign man builds territory. Territory does not chase approval. It does not react to every movement. It expands deliberately. Look at your behavior under stress. Do you rush to repair misunderstandings? Virtuous pattern. Do you calculate advantage in conflict? Powerful pattern. Do you withdraw strategically and let others recalibrate? Sovereign pattern.
Most men oscillate between virtue and power. They attempt to be good until tested, then assert dominance clumsily. That instability weakens both positions. Sovereignty requires integration. You do not discard virtue, you subordinate it. You do not worship power, you discipline it. The virtuous man is safe. The powerful man is respected. The sovereign man is untouchable. And untouchability is the final form of authority. Because when others cannot predict your need for approval or provoke your ego, they lose leverage over you.
Now the correction begins. Not rage, not aggression, not theatrics. Control. If virtue was your first language, you do not discard it, you subordinate it. Authority is rebuilt by reversing the sequence. Power first, morality second. The first shift is internal. You stop negotiating your boundaries emotionally. No more over-explaining why something crossed a line. No more rehearsing speeches in your head to sound fair. A boundary is not a debate, it is a condition. Violation meets consequence. Quietly. You do not threaten, you withdraw access. Access is currency. Attention, time, validation, cooperation. These are privileges, not rights. The moment someone disrespects a boundary and you continue offering access unchanged, you teach them your limits are flexible. Flexible limits invite pressure. Controlled power begins with controlled availability. You respond slower, not to manipulate, but to remove urgency from your nervous system. Urgency signals need. Need signals leverage, just not yours. You eliminate visible need. The second shift is speech discipline. You speak less, you explain less, you state decisions without moral framing. This is how it will be handled. No apology, no long justification, no emotional cushioning. If someone resists, you assess, not react. Reaction is surrender to stimulus. Assessment is command over response. You must train emotional impermeability, not suppression, not coldness, regulation. When provoked, your face does not tighten, your voice does not sharpen, your body does not lean forward defensively. Stillness unnerves challengers. They expect emotional turbulence. When they meet calm consequence instead, recalibration begins. The third shift is selective unpredictability. Predictability is comfort. Total unpredictability is chaos. You want controlled unpredictability. Sometimes you engage, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you grant, sometimes you withhold. Not randomly, but strategically. If people can perfectly map your reactions, they can maneuver around you. If they know you always forgive, they will test. If they know you always escalate, they will provoke strategically. But if they cannot predict whether access will be granted or removed, tension works in your favor. Tension is leverage. The fourth shift is detachment from immediate harmony. You must tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term positioning. This is where most virtuous men collapse. They crave resolution. They want peace restored now. Authority does not chase peace. It establishes terms. If conflict arises because you enforced a boundary, you do not rush to soothe. You allow others to process. Silence becomes gravity. Most people recalibrate when they sense their access depends on it. You do not need to win arguments. You need to maintain structure. Structure is maintained through consequence consistency. One inconsistency destroys authority faster than 10 displays of kindness. If you say something is unacceptable, it remains unacceptable. No emotional exceptions, no last-minute softening to protect image. Consistency builds psychological weight. People begin adjusting preemptively.
Finally, you recalibrate your relationship with virtue itself. Virtue becomes a tool, not your identity. You are fair when fairness strengthens your position. You are generous when generosity reinforces loyalty. You are patient when patience increases advantage. But you do not sacrifice position to protect reputation. Reputation follows strength. Strength does not follow reputation. The disciplined man understands this inversion. Controlled power is not dominance for ego. It is stability for sovereignty. It is the refusal to be emotionally recruited into other people's chaos. It is the refusal to be guilted into weakening your stance. When guilt loses its leverage over you, authority solidifies. Most men are manipulated through guilt or approval. Remove those hooks, and influence over you collapses. This chapter is not about becoming feared irrationally. It is about becoming immovable rationally. Emotionally stable, strategically silent, consistent in consequence, detached from applause. You do not need to look powerful. You need to be structurally difficult to exploit. When that shift locks in, something changes in rooms. People sense recalibration. They measure their words. They test less frequently. They negotiate more carefully. Not because you shouted, because you stopped bending. Controlled power is architecture. Build it carefully.
This is where the separation happens. Not between good and evil, not between kind and cruel, between manageable and formidable. Society will always preach virtue publicly. It must. Virtue keeps systems stable. It keeps men compliant. It keeps friction low and authority centralized elsewhere. But privately, the same system rewards power. Promotions do not go to the most morally pure. They go to the most decisive. Relationships do not orbit the most agreeable. They orbit the most stable under pressure. Influence does not accumulate around the most apologetic. It gathers around the least movable. You are told to be virtuous. You are rewarded for being powerful. That contradiction is intentional. If you remain virtuous first, you will be selected for responsibility without authority. You will be trusted but not deferred to. You will carry weight but not control direction. Useful, replaceable. If you become powerful first but lack discipline, you will dominate briefly and burn bridges quickly. You will be respected in bursts and isolated long-term, reactive, unstable. But if you choose sovereignty, if you subordinate virtue, discipline power, and detach from validation, you enter a different category entirely. You are no longer easily recruited into emotional games. You are no longer manipulated through guilt. You are no longer predictable through flattery. You become structurally difficult to control. That is the real divide. Most men want comfort. They want approval with mild influence. They want peace without pressure, so they remain manageable. They negotiate their own boundaries. They defend their goodness. They apologize for firmness. And they wonder why authority evades them. Authority does not evade. It avoids weakness. The path forward is colder. It requires isolation at times. People will misinterpret you. Some will call you detached. Others will label you harsh. A few will feel threatened. That is the cost of no longer bending. The question is not whether virtue has value. The question is whether you are using virtue or hiding behind it. Because if you hide behind it, predators, competitors, and opportunists will sense it. They will test it. They will press it. And when they find no consequence behind your principles, they will adjust accordingly. You will remain respected in theory, but overridden in practice. This chapter is not a motivational speech. It is a division line. You now understand the mechanics. You see the pattern in history. You recognize the archetypes. You know the internal shifts required. What remains is choice. Remain the man who seeks to be seen correctly, or become the man who cannot be easily moved. One path earns praise, the other earns position. One path keeps you comfortable, the other keeps you sovereign. You cannot inhabit both fully. The world will continue applauding virtue while quietly submitting to power. The question is simple. Will you remain selectable, or will you become the one who selects?